For centuries, the picturesque city of Monaco has been the seat of an independent principality, world-renowned for its wealth and beauty. However, a short distance down the Mediterranean coast, between the Italian and French Riviera, sits an equally beautiful littoral city, one with its own rich and colorful history, some of which is shared with Monaco, and some of which represents an independent streak of its own. Later, it would be outside influences conspiring to affect the course of its history. It's the seaside border city, the commune of Menton. In the early 15th century, Monaco had emerged as independent under the rebellious Genoan house of Grimaldi. As part of this, beyond the Rock of Monaco itself, the Grimaldis had acquired a hinterlands territory plus a significant amount of additional coastline, including the seaside town of Menton, known for the citrus groves lining the slopes of the Riviera. Other neighboring small towns and communes were also under the control of the princes of Monaco, including Roquebrune, Cape Martin, and Monty. This slice of the Mediterranean coast would remain largely peaceful and out of the affairs of Europe's wars for over 4 centuries. By the end of the 18th century, the lands were protected militarily by France, though the surrounding lands, including the city of Nice, were under the control of the Italian Kingdom of Sardinia and the House of Savoy. The revolution in France would finally upend this order. In 1792 and 3, during the height of the Revolutionary Terror, France occupied and then annexed the county of Nice and the Principality of Monaco, including Menton or Menton in French. It would remain French after Napoleon's takeover and throughout the duration of his rule. During this time, Napoleon would build the first road network in the Riviera, better linking each of these towns together. After Napoleon's final efforts were crushed in 1815, the county of Nice was back under Piedmontese Sardinian control, while Monaco was once again independent under the restored House of Grimaldi, though instead of France being its military guarantor, that role was now filled by Piedmont Sardinia. In addition, Menton, despite being part of Monaco for centuries, was declared by the Congress of Vienna as a fief granted to the princes of Monaco by the kings of Sardinia, although this was a formality and did not affect Monaco's sovereignty. However, it was a foreshadowing of the soon-to-be independent histories of Menton and Roquebrune. In 1848, a wave of revolutions swept Europe. Monaco was no exception, with the city of Monaco and the Grimaldi princes drawing the ire of those in Menton and Roquebrune, due in large part to high taxes on the lucrative lemon exports. Since the end of the previous year, they'd been agitating to join the Customs Union of Tuscany, which would open up trade with other cities further down the Azure coast. The French and the Sardinians got involved in negotiations, but the prince would not budge. As the springtime of nations ensued in early 1848, it became known to the rebels in Menton that there was a possibility of receiving protection from Piedmont Sardinia. The previous fall, as part of its role as guarantor of Monaco's sovereignty, Sardinian troops had helped put down an uprising in Menton. Now, however, they saw the 1848 revolutions as a potential opportunity to embark on an Italian nation-building project. Under the new circumstances, Menton and Roquebrune declared their independence on March 21st, with the cities forming their own independent republic and officially banning Monaco's Grimaldi dynasty a week later. In line with its promise, the Kingdom of Sardinia, which again since 1815 had technically granted rights to these towns to Monaco, declared on April 3rd that its guarantee of Monaco's sovereignty only applied to Monaco itself and sent troops into Menton, this time to guarantee its sovereignty against the princes of Monaco. However, Sardinia continued to look for a more permanent solution. On September 18th, Sardinian law was applied in Menton and Roquebrune. On May 1st of the next year, the administrators of the county of Nice were given de facto jurisdiction over the territory. Eventually, on November 10th, the towns were officially annexed into the Kingdom of Sardinia as a constituent part of the county of Nice. However, in 1860, a treaty was signed at Torino. This treaty saw Napoleon III's new French Empire lending assistance to Piedmont Sardinia and its Italian allies in their war of unification against the German-Austrian Habsburgs. In exchange, the House of Savoy agreed to territorial concessions, including their home duchy of Savoy, as well as the county of Nice, including Menton and Roquebrune. This was subject to a plebiscite, Italian unification leader Giuseppe Garibaldi claimed electoral impropriety by Napoleon III's government. Either way, the plebiscite was approved, and on March 24th, Piedmont Sardinia agreed to hand over control to the French. Thus, on June 14, 1860, 45 years after it had last been part of Napoleon's original French Empire, the area was now annexed into Napoleon III's new French Empire, becoming once again known as Menton. However, there was one loose end that still needed to be taken care of, as the princes of Monaco had never officially ceded their rights to Menton and Rocabruna to the Sardinian kingdom. Napoleon III decided to take care of the situation himself, paying the House of Grimaldi a one-time fee of 4 million francs for the permanent rights to Menton and Rocabruna, with the agreement signed on February 2, 1861 and made official on the 12th. Shortly thereafter, on March 17th, having unified most of the Italian-speaking lands, the Kingdom of Sardinia renamed itself the Kingdom of Italy. After Napoleon III's defeat in 1870 and 71, Menton and Rocabruna would be retained by France as part of a newly restored French Republic. In the late 19th and early 20th century, along with the rest of the Riviera, Menton became a destination for tourists, known as the Pearl of France. With France and Italy allied during World War I, the area remained an oasis of peace. However, it would not be so fortunate in the following years. Menton and Nice were included in Italy's post-World War I irredentist agenda, referring to territories that needed to be redeemed by the Italians, both on the Adriatic coast and the Austrian littoral or Riviera, which had been promised to Italy in the Treaty of Rome, but much of which had ended up under Yugoslav control, other claims around the Mediterranean and North and East Africa, as well as the territories ceded to France in 1860, those being Savoy, the original and namesake possession of the Italian royal house, and Nice, including Menton. These territorial claims were a central part of Italian foreign policy during the Mussolini era. His fascist regime later demanded these and other concessions from the French. This was met with outrage by France, while Italy aligned itself with Germany against the French. In May of 1940, with World War II now underway, Germany invaded France. Italy, despite its various pacts with the Germans, initially remained neutral. However, in a shocking campaign, Germany had essentially defeated France within a month. Although Mussolini had been advised that Italy was not yet ready for war, now that German tanks were rapidly approaching Paris, the moment of decision had arrived for Italy. On June 5th, Mussolini told Marshal Pietro Badoglio, quote, "I only need a few thousand dead so that I can sit at the peace conference as a man who has fought," end quote. 5 days later, with the Germans now rolling into Paris, Mussolini declared war on the French and British. With France seemingly on the verge of capitulating to the Germans, the Italians hastily scrambled to launch an offensive against the Alpine border, with the hope of securing gains before the French surrender. The campaign began in earnest on June 16th, however it achieved very little success, securing a few key outposts and mountain passes, costing the Italians around 6,000 casualties, including around 650 deaths, along with over 2,100 men knocked out of action due to frostbite in the alpine terrain. Back before the commencement of hostilities, France had evacuated the civilian population of Menton. On June 22nd, Italian troops entered the city, with intense street fighting commencing. The Italians gradually forced the French to retreat. However, they held out in the coastal fort of Pont Saint-Louis, putting up a spirited defense. On the 24th, with the French having signed an armistice with the Germans 2 days earlier, representatives arrived in Rome to discuss terms. Italy's terms were fairly lenient, with Mussolini saving most of his demands for an eventual peace conference. Under the terms of the armistice, Italy annexed the few areas it had conquered, including Menton, while France had to demilitarize its alpine and coastal fortifications along a 50-kilometer strip. The armistice would come into effect the next day, June 25th, with Menton officially annexed into the Kingdom of Italy. Monaco was not occupied, but a large commercial influence was exercised by the Italian Armistice Commission, which also exercised its authority in Nice, along with the annexed territories such as Menton. Monaco's neutral status provided Italy a way to trade with the rest of the world and circumvent the Allied blockade. The Principality would have its own unique World War II experience, different from that of Menton and Rocabruna, and worthy of a video of its own. Thus, Mentone was integrated into Italy, with the redeemed city becoming a feature point of propaganda for the regime, especially given the prestigious reputation it had developed under French rule as a pearl of the Mediterranean. This would remain the status quo for the next 3+ years, although in November 1942, in coordination with Germany extending their garrisons in France to the southern part of the country, Italian troops garrisoned Nice and other portions of southeastern France. These areas did remain under at least the nominal civil authority of Philippe Pétain's puppet French state. Italy also garrisoned Monaco at this time, and although friendly authorities were installed, Monaco's sovereignty did remain intact. The rest of the situation, though, remained quiet at this time. That would change in September 1943. At that time, with Italy having been defeated in the colonial warfare in Africa, and the Italian home island of Sicily falling to the British and Americans, Mussolini was deposed by King Victor Emmanuel and his own fascist Grand Council, which subsequently dissolved itself. Following this self-immolation of the fascist party on July 25th, Mussolini was officially summoned by the king, removed from his post, and placed under arrest. General Pietro Badoglio became the head of the Royal Italian government, and on September 8th it was announced that the Kingdom of Italy had signed an armistice with the British and Americans. The Germans, who already had garrisons in much of Italy, were furious, disarming much of the Royal Italian Army, rescuing Mussolini, and reinstalling him as the head of a puppet fascist republic in the areas still under Axis control. This new regime, however, was forced to cede some of Italy's recent conquests to other German partners. The Germans disarmed the Italian garrisons in southeastern France, as well as in Monaco, bringing with them the persecution and murder of local Jews. Monaco did still retain its sovereignty under German garrison, as well as its officially neutral status, remaining one of Germany's few outlets to trade with the rest of the world. In Mentone, however, the Germans reversed the 1940 French-Italian armistice, with the city reverting to the sovereignty of Pétain's puppet French state. Most of the Italian troops, settlers, and nationalist sympathizers had already fled. For those remaining in the city, now under harsh German garrison, the difference in being part of Germany's French puppet state as opposed to its Italian one was purely nominal, with both heavily occupied by German garrisons. However, the tides finally started to turn against the Germans, and on September 3rd, 1944, American troops captured Monaco. On September 8th, the Allies rolled into Menton, restoring the town to the new French Republic and restoring the place of the picturesque yet now damaged city as the Pearl of France. With repairs to the city in the ensuing years and a rebound in its population, Menton is, to this day, one of the most prestigious and beautiful towns along the world-renowned Riviera. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like the video, leave a comment for the algorithm, and if you like this content, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell button. Make sure to check out the project that forms the basis for these videos at apoliticalworldmap.org, and if you can, please donate on Patreon. Thanks again for watching. I'm Alex. I am out.